Welcome back to another Old World Fanatics video on the game we all love, Warhammer The Old World. I'm extremely honoured though. My name's Gomo, and here I am joined by two very famous, and I'd say some of the best minds behind the competitive side of the game, at least at the moment, I hope. Certainly more than I am. Chris the Egg Cousins and Pash Monster, or Pash from Pashhammer, mate. How are you guys?
Doing well, thanks. If we're the best that competitive minds have to offer, things are in a dark place.
Dark
Two of
place.
the best. I'm sure there's other people out
Two
there.
of the minds.
Pretty, I don't know, pretty influential from my point of view. I was saying to Chris just before, like, I think his voice has been gracing my ears for, I don't know, 10 plus years on the Dwellers years ago. And so I'm trying to contribute back. I don't have the tactical minds that you guys do, but, you know, it's good. We need more people in the community, so it's been good.
I think also in like 1 or 2 episodes you'll have overtaken us, which shows how consistent.
Oh, is it? Okay. We did 88, I think, the other day. So we're 2 off 90. So yeah, I think it was pretty early on. We just decided we got nothing else to offer but turn up every Monday. So that's what we're doing.
Quantity over quality. That's totally fine. Right. That's the route I'm going down as well.
Yeah, that's good.
It's much better for the algorithm.
Yeah. So I believe you guys have probably already announced this by the time this goes out, that you guys have worked on and published Aussie Comp V2. So that's what we're here to talk about, I guess. Comp in the old world, what you guys have done, not only on V1, but now this new version 2, which happy to, I guess, skim some of the changes or the important things, because I don't want to totally go back over what you've probably already talked about. But then, yeah, happy to chat about just what you find around why we need it, where the game's at, and just a bit of a chat, I guess, while people are painting.
It's an exciting time at the moment, I think, in the community, because there's we've played sort of Warhammer out the rulebook for almost 18 months now, I think, you know, and there's been a lot of events, and people generally have stuck to just playing it out of the book, and I think there is a level that you reach at some point during that journey that you go, you know, I want something different. I sort of feel like there's a few limitations to playing it out of the rulebook that might not make for the most fun experience. And that's probably the stage that we got to, where we thought, you know what if we started to tweak around with some of the sort of restrictions that were in place? Maybe we can improve this, make it a little bit better. And that was sort of what started this whole conversation about the comp and the rules pack. And that's where we got to now. And we had our first version a few months ago, just something that we threw together, really. We hosted an event, a local event with it. We had feedback from all the players, and then we made a version 2 sort of better and more improved. And I think this is going to be a living project. It's something that's going to improve as we go along.
So have you got V2? I can bring it up in a minute, but is there a tournament like scheduled in to use it, like you had the other one, the Dragon Green? What was it called?
Dragon's Grudge.
Dragon's
Grudge. Yeah. We haven't got another one scheduled, but not one that we're running, but there is another one that's hopefully being run in the next couple of months locally, that we're hoping to sort of convince them to use that pack. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think the exciting thing from here is basically once it's live, and you know, by the time this episode goes out, it will be live. People will start to look at it, people start planning it, and hopefully to try and run some events with it as well. And that's when we start to get the real feedback. And then we get to hear what people really think, rather than just the hot off the press reactions that most of the internet provides.
Yeah, I think it's worth bearing in mind as well that, like, almost from the start, we haven't been playing straight out of the book. We've been using no allies, the rule of 3, rule of 6. Games Workshop for their own tournaments have brought in additional restrictions beyond the rulebook itself. So this is just the same thing, but I guess done to a higher degree of restriction, because the things that slipped through some of the original comp setups, like no more than 3 copies of a unit, I don't think spamming gyrocopters is what's dominating the old world. I think we have some larger, flappier problems.
Yeah, and I don't know, like it's probably a little bit SDS as well. They're not building a game particularly for the tournament scene, although I think they'd be naive to think that they're not building games that are going to be played in a tournament scene, because all their games probably are. I don't know about Necromunda and all that, but I mean, Blood Bowl's probably the biggest tournament game out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but Yeah, you're right. Like it just feels like it needed something. And I mean, we were talking about this on our podcast, I think last week. It was like no one's ever played out of the book Warhammer
No,
really.
not
Anyway,
really, no.
like, allies are never in there virtually. I mean, I think the good thing about this game, at least from what we've seen so far, is that most of the time special characters have been allowed, and that felt like that was just like nah in 8. So I'm hopefully that carries on. And I know you guys have made it slight little tweaks on that, but it's very one maybe. Is that it?
Yeah, and even so that was one of the sort of founding principles of what our pack was meant to do, is basically no rules changes. That was number one. Like we don't want to change any of the ways that the rules actually play because that's too confusing. And number two, we don't ban anything. You can take everything. Just some of that might not be in as much as you'd want, really.
Yeah, you might have to take a particular Armies of Infamy on some of the things if you wanted a bit. I mean, I doubt you're going to take, what is it, the Errantry Crusade just because you want to win the Falcon Horn, though. I mean, you can, but if that's
maybe somebody will, but that's the thing is like there's a couple of items that we restricted to specific armies of infamy or a specific army out of the book. So basically, it means that those ones get a little bit of a boost, and you just don't see the most common combination of those. And it's a very, very light approach that we've done to it. We haven't done every single army. We haven't done individual restrictions to everything. Some of the comp systems you see out there, they go to town and they say, they really tone things down. And we try to keep it simple. Because not everybody's like us who plays a lot of games and talks and dreams about Warhammer 24/7. Some people actually like to have a life, apparently, so I'm told. You want to make it easy enough for people to pick up, the sort of more casual gamers, and still use it and still enjoy the game, and also do what they want with it as well.
Bring their toys. Do you want me to bring it up? I mean, I'm assuming most people. Again, if you haven't in this first video land on with Aussie Comp, then I'll put a link to your. I think you did a wrap up, whenever it was, a few weeks back, of your V1.
Yeah,
you two did in the one video. So I'll
that's
link
old
that
news
anyway.
now. That's old.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
old
news.
But what I might do is I might bring up the comp, the new one, just so we can just drop because we're talking about it a little bit now. I feel like I do just dwell mostly on the comp, but I mean
that's the biggest part. Yeah, I mean that's the bit that people will talk about the most, I think. So definitely definitely worth going over. There's not a lot there, so we can just even go over it. It's really not a huge thing.
Yeah, okay, cool. And plus there's a few little changes too from V1, which is interesting. Yep.
Probably worth saying as well, like the first 4 lines of the comp does like most of the work, and then the rest is just trying to plug some gaps of things that might have been obviously a bit strong once the first bits had been taken into effect. But for most people, just those sort of first 4 or 5 bits of the comp pack is going to significantly change the look of the army, like the aesthetic of the army you put on the field, in a way that we think is positive.
Yeah, and actually, when you just said that, I've looked at it, and I reckon it's even in descending order of as in if you pick the first one as the most important, the second one adds to that. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go. So obviously, no more than 33% spent on characters. So we've seen some people. Well, we've seen Games Workshop come up with their 25% one character. Like in terms of you can't spend more than 25%, which I don't think. I think it stopped like 2 things, maybe, if that. Or something like that.
That's not a huge thing.
not a lot. And then I remember we had a lot of chats on our podcast back and forth about, maybe it's just 40%, maybe it's 45%. And then you guys went bang 33%, which is lower than I'd ever seen. But
you could even go lower.
30. Wow. I think. Well, you can go crazy. That's the thing, but. That is so what you say, Chris, is pretty much exactly it. Is the biggest change is actually it's in descending order. That first change about how many characters you can take, how much allowance you have in that, is probably the bit that has the most significant impact on what your army looks like. Because at the moment, the most efficient way of building your army is to have your maximum spend on characters, and most armies do that. They they spend around about 1,000 points. Or half your allowance on characters. If you tone that back a little bit, not only are you starting to create some sort of compromise. The player has to think, okay, well, I can take my Killy Dragon Lord, but then I can't really take a level 4 with all the tricks. I need to sort of compromise somewhere. Or maybe I just go like character light, but also you give them points back in their list, essentially. So let's say in a 2,000 point game, a typical 2,000 point game, you've basically got like another 400 points that you've put back into the army list. And what are you going to do with that? Well, that all depends on the rest of the pack. But in this one, you can't just take the next best thing, which is your rare stuff, because that's limited as well. So then you suddenly go, okay, where am I going to put these points? And what we've seen from the event that we held with this is essentially those extra points that you've taken out of characters now look like a combat block. They look like a chunky sort of combat unit. And I think that makes a big difference. That makes it feel more like Warhammer. And it looks cool. And it's definitely something that I think is a positive impact.
Yeah, I actually think when you just made the point about the compromise, so it not only do you get the 400 points back or whatever it is, suddenly you have to think about it changes the composition of the rest of the army as well, because you might not be a magic spam heavy army anymore, so now you are a combat one. So you'll bring different stuff versus the other way around, or maybe you don't have a combat lord on a dragon anymore. So now you might bring more blocks because you go, well, if I get stuck in, if a dragon gets me, I need something just to sit there and, do you know what I mean? So it's adding. Yeah. I think it does so much. I love the idea. I'm not against them having put the 50% in initially, because I probably,
no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, I do buy that story that maybe it's easier to get in.
Yeah.
Paint two big things up, and I
think you're right there. I think there's definitely something about, let's just give them 2 expensive models, and then the rest of the army is smaller. It's easier to get into, because that was a barrier to entry, wasn't it? Is you need a big army. So I guess as a first edition, them going 50% characters was fine, and maybe we'll start to see that being toned down a little bit as we go forward with them releasing further editions.
I think it's not just, it's partly that, you've got more points to spend on characters, but also that 2 kinds of characters in Dragons and level 4s are so integral to how competitive armies are working. And so then you have not only the points to spend on the characters, but a massive incentive to just take a dragon and a level 4 if you can, or multiple level 4s if you don't have a good dragon. And that makes armies a bit samey. And it also means that most of what you spend your time painting, those blocks of units, don't actually really have a starring role.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, I love it.
The funny thing is, with this pack, what we actually saw in the tournament that we held is there's people end up taking fewer dragons, and we say dragons, but we mean any sort of large flying, generally, character that you can take, amount that you can take for a character. So we had 20 plus players, and I think there were maybe 2 or 3 dragons, and they were Warpfire dragons, exactly. So it's like it really reduced the amount of dragons that you see, which is, their dragons are cool. You want to see them, but you don't want to see them on every table all the time.
You could contrast the Dragon's Grudge with the event that Pash and I went to a couple of weeks ago. At Dragon's Grudge, there were a couple of dragons. At the Newcastle event, there were, I think, more than 1 dragon per player.
I think we calculated it. It's like 1.75 dragons per player. Some people had 3, and some people had none. So
there were 5 on the podium.
Was that the one where there's like the top 8? There's 5 Warriors players or something like that. Is that
the top 3 were Warriors players? Yeah, and the top 5 I think had 4 Warriors. But like that's just sometimes happens. Like there was an event in the States the same weekend. Where I saw the top 5, there were 4 High Elf players, and it's just
I did say actually saw that.
It's just what happens sometimes, isn't it? It doesn't mean that army is mad. It just means local game, local meta. So it's just the way it pops out. But Warriors are good, to be fair. So I think there's something to that anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So there we go on, like you said, these sort of carry on. As you said, you don't need to have them, but I think they strengthen your comp pack here. So the no more than 30. The only problem here is now it gets a little bit hard to calculate if you're using an army builder and stuff. You got to get the out, but it's no more than 33% of your points may be spent on units with the flyer special rule, including the full cost of a mounted character. So nerfing that, flying swift stride, menace that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, it's just to try and limit having big, massive flying units that are hard to catch and hard to pick down.
Is that a pun?
It was a little bit, but it was unintentional.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember. Did something change from V1? Was there something about you can't have more than one or something, or is it always
for flying?
33?
Yes. Yeah, there was a small change, wasn't it, Chris?
Yeah, we did have a no duplicate flyers, but we took that clause out, partly because the flyers that we were most concerned about are already getting captured by the percentage on characters. The next line as well, no duplicate rare choices. And we were looking at what the sort of overall army would look like. We weren't super thrilled about the idea of a Lord on a Dragon plus a Warpfire Dragon, or a Tomb King on Dragon plus Necrosphinx, or spending all of your 1,000 points of special on Pegasus Knights, those kinds of things. But once you've already reduced that, it doesn't matter so much if someone's got like one Pegasus character and 2 units of 3 Pegasus Knights. It's a lot less horrific than what we often see without that. So yeah, we were trying to not just always keep adding restrictions, but also take them away where we thought they weren't actually needed.
Yeah, no, and this one the next one's a bit changed too, at least for larger games, I think. So yeah, no rare units may be duplicated, and that includes if they're in a different category. Is that right? So that means
that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, the ones that you can get, is that the ones that you can get like sometimes in special and in rare?
That's right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so like things like Necrosphinxes that can be in rare and special, things like Sisters of Avalon, which can be core, any of these sort of units where they are primarily in rare, but they can also be in other sections. Yeah, we limited the duplication to that to 1, and part of that is almost sort of like a theme. It's rare units. They're meant to be seldom seen. There shouldn't be 2 or 3 of the same rare unit in every army.
I might be confused here. Does that screw that? What's the dwarf one when you take the character and make it a Slayer army? Are those? Or Slayer's special, so it doesn't matter. Can't remember.
I think normal Slayers are, but Doomseekers might not be. This is a kind of blunt instrument in that there's some sort of not unintended, but some compromises that we made to keep it kind of clear and straightforward. Why can someone take 10 Blood Knights, but I can't take 2 Eagles? Like that might seem a little bit.
I can't get 2 Snotling pump wagons. What the hell?
Yeah. But that's we tried lots of different ways to keep the things that we didn't want showing up prevented without and to let people take some more of their Eagles and bolt throwers and giants. But ultimately, we just weren't able to come up with something sufficiently elegant to fit in here that would kind of capture all the things we wanted to hit. And so unfortunately, Eagles and bolt throwers have caught a bit of a stray.
I guess you could argue down the track, maybe. I mean, that, as I said, it's a living thing and it'll evolve. Maybe there's a point cap at some point where you go, well, if it's under X, then that doesn't matter. Who knows? But this is the change here. I'm pretty sure too. You've taken into account larger games. Is that right? But wasn't in there before. So 27.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we sort of revised for this version, is essentially take into account games that are both smaller and larger than the standard sort of 2K, and just making sure that these restrictions still fit within those larger limits, and that the idea for this is to try and make it simple but versatile, and try and cover as many sort of systems as possible, because I know despite 2K being the standard, there are other versions. People play at different points limits.
I've seen a few 3,000 ones and stuff. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really keen for TOs to start trying different points limits as well. I think there's loads of cool stuff, and that also maybe reduces the need for composition restrictions at some of those points levels. When you go to 1,800 points and now you lose a lot of your most potent double rare choices, for example, or you can only take 1 level 4. Some of the rest of the things that we're looking at might not even be as necessary, but we wanted the document to be scalable to whatever points limits people want to play at.
That makes total sense. And then I believe this is the same, but correct me, no more than 25% of your total army unit strength, maybe in 1 unit, just in army like composition when you're setting up the list, or what do they call it, the muster list. So this doesn't stop Death Starring as such, but does stop you bringing that like 140 skeleton archers or something in a unit.
Exactly. And this is again, Death Stars where you have one big massive unit with everything in it. We're not trying to completely stop that, but maybe just reduce how ridiculous it can get. So this is a change that we had from the first version, essentially taking it from, I think we had about a third, 33% to down to 25%.
Oh, it was changed, was it? Okay,
it is a change, yeah.
Okay.
So, and it was a conscious sort of decision because, not only because the number one list that won did have a big massive Death Star, but also because it was feedback from the players basically that they thought it was a step in the right direction, but they wanted more. They wanted more restrictions, and that's basically what we've done is we've just sort of ratcheted it up a little bit to see how things
makes
go.
it more Warhammer again, though. It's another one that opens up you
Exactly.
bringing another unit rather than okay.
I think that's the thing.
There's a couple of other benefits to this as well for my mind. One of them is that whilst you can still pile all your characters into one good unit, you're still going to have a decent number of points outside of that your opponent can chase. So you don't end up with a situation where someone can just kind of force you to engage with their one unit that is the only thing that's worth points in the army. The other thing is that it let us take out a couple of lines restricting where your poison banners could go. So
actually, yep.
we had a bit of time to play around with lists and look at what was possible. And once you ratchet the restriction on army unit strength in a single unit up to 25%, you can still get 40 or even 50 goblins with a poison banner reasonably easily. But it's a real struggle to get up into the 70s and 80s. And so then we were able to take out a couple of lines being specific about where poison banners can go. And again, that's sort of in the giving people more options, but also streamlining the document. So it's less restrictive in some ways and more in others.
Oh, they align so well, though, because you brought that back. So, yeah, I can have my poison block now, but there's not also 3 flying behemoths hanging around. Do I really need like that? So it's this whole cat and mouse parts where, maybe you'll bring it for combat. I don't know. Like, there's, it's interesting. So they're sort of the main 4. I agree. Like, you take them. You don't need to have them all, but they do all. I can see how they all synergize. And I'll just say, I mean, we've brought this up before, but like I played a game under your comp, just a friendly, and it just looks like a Warhammer army.
Exactly. This is the most common bit of feedback that we get from people who are like, they give it a try. They're like, okay, fine, we'll play with it, and they're like, oh, that kind of looks more like what I want to do. Then maybe we've got something. We're moving in the right direction with it. So that's what I would say to anybody who's skeptical. Is just give it a try.
And no one's like, I don't know. You're not whinging about special rules or swift stride or all these other things which you end up having to change the game. It just suddenly starts working anyway a bit. Like I'm sure there's broken things still, but it's okay. So then you went into some just these other ones you're saying are related to just sort of some of the more abusive of the literal sort of thing. So one of them's just the extremely common stuff. You originally had that. There's only ever one, but now you've let this through a little bit.
That a little bit, a little bit. Just relaxed it a little bit. Basically, any one-use item can be extremely common. You can have multiple one-use items, and that's just.
What about Charm Shield? How does that work? Those ones that technically are only one use, sort of.
Are you gonna?
No, Charm Shield's not. Surely.
So don't need an FAQ for that. Okay. You still got the shield, okay, fair enough.
Still got the shield at the end of it, but it's these sort of like Dispel Scrolls, Power Scrolls, these sort of arcane items that are one use only, and are extremely common already. They shouldn't really be limited by that sort of thing.
So Favor of the God, no, is it
Favors?
No.
Favors is another one. So all of these sort of small things. It just means that you can take other things within that slot as well, because that's the other thing that it sort of limits is if you take away the extremely common clause, you can only have one arcane item.
I see what you mean. So, I didn't realize that was worded. Okay, so you removed it, sort of wasn't a thing. So therefore, if you took a Dispel Scroll, you can't take something else.
You can't take anything else. And I think Wizards are probably the ones that see this the most, because usually what you'll see is you'll take some sort of cool arcane item like a lore familiar or a puppet or something like that. Then you'll take your second item like a power scroll or a dispel scroll or anything like that. Sometimes you might even take a third one like a spell familiar or something like that. So you can suddenly have a Chaos Sorcerer Lord with 3 arcane items because they're extremely common. But if you take away the one use parts, then you can't have that quite.
Yeah, okay.
Can't
I
have
totally
all of
missed
it.
that actually on the first one, but maybe I
Yeah,
just didn't.
that's subtle. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
subtle thing.
And with lists
Yeah.
for our event, this was the one that a few people ran afoul of, just forgetting which items they couldn't stack with other ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it took me probably 6 months to realize that you could still stack. I just thought when I first read the book, I just thought it was like you could stack that one, but that was it. I didn't realize you could go, oh, I can also have something in that slot. Like it took a while to go, oh, hang on, I've been reading the rules.
Yeah, it's subtle to think these things out, but yeah, it makes a difference. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then we got the actual ones okay. So I'm pretty sure this is close to being the same, maybe as it was. The Green Knight and the Falconhorn are limited to the elementary.
That one's
I think that was the same. That's exactly the same. We haven't changed that. And again, that's just to try and reduce the sort of most common builds in the top tier armies. And actually, let's be honest, if you reduce the Falconhorn, it makes everybody's life a lot happier.
Yeah, well, now we've got another one coming in the Beasts by the sound of it. But I mean,
I
don't know.
That's going to be interesting. Well, this is the other thing is like this document is live now. It's current now.
Yeah.
GW on Monday could be like, here's Wood Elves, Beastmen, and Cathay. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, okay. So, start again. It will be a living document. It's something we'll have to come back and review once in a while based on the feedback that we get from people.
Yeah. And then this one has changed. Infernal Puppet may not be taking in the Warriors of Chaos Grand Army. I think you originally had it. You had to have it in the Heralds. Is that what it was?
Yeah, the Herald. So it's that. I mean, basically, the idea is the same as you're trying to keep it away from the most common build, which is having it in the Grand Army. You can. I mean, the Heralds, to be honest, is much the same as the Grand Army. It's not that different through a lot of builds. However, it has a higher core tax. Therefore, they're sort of paying for their Army of Infamy ability, as it were.
Under this comp, though, they're probably not really disadvantaged with that.
No, not really. Well, that's the other thing is it brings everybody else down a level, so they're actually in a way a little bit better. So yeah, it's a small change, but again, just trying to reduce the amount of times that you see it in the most common builds.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a bit. I don't play Chaos, but the Wolves of the Sea, are they limited with their magic user anyway?
Yeah, you can only have a Chaos Lord or a Sorcerer Lord, so it's one or the other. Yeah, right. And they do have slightly lower level fighting characters, plenty of options for those, but yeah, you'd be limited with that anyway. So and to be honest, Wolves of the Sea are just like quite a different army. They're not bad, but they are tricky to figure out, and I think people are still figuring them out. So we'll leave them to play with their toys.
I think the other thing to, I guess, point out with these is we've only picked a few particular armies to give specific additional restrictions to, and the things we've focused on are things that stop you from doing stuff that you might find fun. Ethereal Green Knight charging things from out of nowhere. Falconhorn, you can't fly. Puppet, you can't cast spells. The next line about Mortuary Cult, that one's a struggle, but the reason we wanted to look at Mortuary Cult is because their casting values mean that dispelling becomes so difficult. Yeah. And so the idea is taking out things that just stop people from doing what they've brought their toys to do.
Yeah. So yeah, that one is basically can't take the Law Familiar on that one, and you're limited to. Limited to 0-1 High Priest. Your Sharp you taken as core choice may not take Great Bows. So. That's and that's probably the biggest challenge. Like you originally had the Amulet of Serpent could only be taken in.
It was the Grand Army, I believe.
Grand Army, yeah, that's right.
But so that Mortuary Cult is something that we that sort of slid under the radar in V1. Nobody really took it to our event to an abusable level, but we realized you could actually do quite some horrendous combos. So that was something that we had to have a look at. And the whole idea, it's very difficult actually. Mortuary Cult is very difficult to do like a general restriction to more cult. So these are the best ways that we could think of without limiting them further in a way. So this had probably the most discussion throughout the whole compact and the different little levels that you can do. But essentially, you're trying to make them a little bit less reliable. They have an incredible ability to cast spells, but you're trying to reduce their reliability on getting the spells they want, and also reduce some of the really good other combos you can have in that list, such as the Bushapti. You can still have them in core.
Mm.
You know, they just have to have great weapons.
Great weapons.
Or you can have them in special. You know, like with the great bows. But again, you're going to have to pay for that. And that just sort of reduces the efficiency of that a little bit more, because it is one of the top tier armies, I think, at the moment.
This might also be slightly overcooked. We could certainly revisit this and decide, actually, we can dial it back. But if you don't like these restrictions with your mortuary cult army, you can also play those same models as a grand army. That's I think as far as I know, that shouldn't be any there should be any problem in doing that. And
you just won't get those casting bonus things and stuff.
Yeah,
but that's
you
fine.
just don't get you're not casting with a +8 quite as easily. So yeah, definitely.
I love how it's just so simple. It's like boom, 4 8 lines of stuff.
And this is probably the 8 lines of stuff in the whole pack that'll be the most controversial, and people will tell us we're wrong about because of the way that it is. But and
I guess
all I can really say is just try it. Like give it a try just with those restrictions, and see if you like the look of your game better.
And so in terms of, I think those first 4 lines are the things that change the shape of the game. And then the second set of 4 lines are kind of stopgaps for things that slip through the cracks of the first lot. If you find some of the stuff really offensive, like you just can't play Exiles without a Green Knight, for your games with your mates, just agree as to which parts you think are fair to use or not. If you're running a tournament and you don't like some of this, you can change it. It's your tournament. But this is where this is what we think leads to more reliably more fun and interactive games than not using these things. At least that's what we found so far. But we are only almost perfect, not quite perfect. So there might be
exactly. There's always room for improvement.
No, I mean, it just encourages you, especially like you said, 18 months in, almost, whatever it is, 16 months, whatever. Like people are ready to paint some more stuff, and like this now allows you to dust off some of the stuff that you're not bringing in the game, and now you can, especially with the core. And I really like it. I'll need to, I guess, with Australia, just like from I feel like because our Masters event got voted in to, like, our season got into the end of June, so it's like I'm not 100% sure that many comps have actually even used it. I know people have played around with it, but the ones that are mostly comping stuff are sitting around that Throne of Skulls comp, which again, how useful is it? I'm not sure. But so I think hopefully after June, this might start creeping in. Or again, it's going to depend on what Games Workshop do too. Because I mean,
that's it. We could see changes. We could see a little heavy errata / 1.5 type edition coming out. There is always rumors floating around the internet that there's an imminent release of some sort of document of match play or things to make infantry better. It might happen, or it might happen in 6 months' time. We don't really know. I don't even think GW knows, to be honest. So at the moment, all we can really that shouldn't stop us from trying to make the game better now for us.
Well, the more people like all of us put stuff like this out, I'm assuming Games Workshop at least do look as well. And the play testers obviously play and know and stuff. So this is, I mean, it's all good to have this information out there because they're good ideas. I mean, at the time, some of the, especially like how you've done the last 4, the items. When I first read the first version, I went, "Oh, that's so clever!" Like just moving this item from there, and only can put it in this journal. Oh, Armies of Infamy! I thought that's such a good way to do it. Like you're not taking it away, but you're just going, just use it over there. Like you don't see that. I didn't see that much before. So, very clever, I thought.
I guess something else to point out as well. Even if you're in an area where most people are gearing up for a Masters system that's not using this, whilst we're primarily sort of tournament focused players, a lot of people aren't. And if you think this will lead to a more fun game, just play it. It's not specifically designed for playing tournaments necessarily, though it can be used there.
100%.
But probably most of the games that we expect to happen under this, with this comp framework, and that we'd be keen to hear feedback from, are just going to be people playing because they're sick of, or if they don't want to negotiate themselves, a helpful framework to stop the sort of ratcheting up of power creep. Like, we started with our nice friendly armies, but then we we keep playing against each other every week, and now we've both got 2 dragons. Like,
yeah,
And this is the thing,
I've heard that too. It's hard to
you
self-regulate.
well, this is it. It's about
Yeah.
self-regulation. You could quite happily, if you're just meeting out with a mate of yours for a casual game, you'd be like, all right, okay, let's play a game. Should we use Aussie rules? Yeah, Aussie rules. That's fine, cool. You already know the type of game you're gonna have. Otherwise, you could bring your nice, funky, fluffy Seaguard army, and your opponent's bringing a 5 scream vampire list and just utterly demolishes you. So I think this almost gives you a framework for just more I want to say more fun games, but it's basically games that are not quite as harsh and brutal as they would be straight out of the rules.
Yeah. And that's where even just those first lines, the first 4, you just do that. I mean, the other ones are more related to, like, again, if you're not playing those armies, you don't even look at them anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything, just without going through it, is there anything that you thought was important that you changed up, or where you went with the scenarios? Obviously, the first one was around that. What was the
Forbidden Shores?
Yeah.
Shrouded Shores. Yeah.
Sort of, sounds like you just standardized it a little bit here, or made your own.
Really, the next part is really just to make people think about using scenarios. Up until now, mostly we've just been playing open battle in various different formats, just kill as much stuff as you can type of scenario. This introduces some objectives, capturing objectives, different ways to deploy them, etc. And it's basically just to get people to think. What I'm hoping will happen from this is TOs will take this forward and create more cool stuff that we go, oh man, we didn't even think about that. That's even better. Yeah, let's use that, because the more variety that we have in the way that we play our games, the more fun it'll be for everybody. So yeah, this is just a suggestion of some ways that you can introduce sort of objective capturing type scenarios into your gameplay.
Yeah, and before the big event we had in Scotland, which was the Battle for Green Hollow Vampire's Kiss, I was running the event and trying to come up with an objective-based scenario that was an improvement on open battle. I wasn't going to put something into a big tournament without being really confident that it was good, and I didn't come up with anything in a time frame that I thought was acceptable for that. And then shortly afterwards, Games Workshop dropped this Upon Shrouded Shores scenario. The way that objectives worked in that was exactly what I was looking for. And credit to people whose job is games design. They did a way better job of that than I was able to come up with myself. And so played a couple of games of it, loved the scenario, objective capturing, but the rest of some of the other bits and pieces for the narrative scenario didn't translate as well. So this is basically taking the objectives from that and giving you a suggestion for how you can just put those objectives into normal deployment maps for Warhammer.
That's what I liked about it. Yep.
And then you end up with scenarios to capture, but without having to do too much extra complicated stuff that some of the other scenarios.
And it removes that random bit out of the whichever one it is, the reserve one or whatever, where you roll one
meeting
and
engagement.
Meeting engagement. Yeah, no, I like it. You got the 4 different ways to drop the markers, and I certainly, I mean, I never played AOS or 40k, and this has become a big thing, isn't it? Where you're picking up objectives, sitting there, and it's turn-based, turn-based rather than round-based, sort of counting up. We've never really seen that specifically in fantasy.
Not
well,
so
we
much.
have seen it.
It's just some people argue that it's still a victory points killing type battle simulator, and that's fine. The whole point of these scenarios isn't the objective of the game is to capture the flag. That's not really the way it works. All it does is it offers you bonus victory points if you do hold this part of the board, or if you contest this objective, and it just, you can still play the I want to kill all your army type game, but you also have a secondary objective there as well, which is beneficial for those people who are facing maybe that are a bit newer, and maybe they're facing an army list that they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. You can still capture some objectives and still get some points out of a bad game, as it were. You still have something to play for.
It aligns with your pack, though. I mean, your comp that, like, again, if we're trying to fix infantry and stuff, and like, it just, you want to build things with a bit more staying power, a bit more unit strength, a bit more sitting around rather than just charging 20 inches and wiping stuff out. So I don't know. I like it. I can see that you don't have to. You don't need to use it, but I would like it. If one or two scenarios in a tournament have it, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, the numbers start getting. I must admit, when I did it, I was like losing track of how to count it all up and stuff. But that's just because I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty easy once you get used to it.
We found at Dragon's Grudge the first round, a lot of people were going pretty much up to time, and then in the second and third round, got a lot quicker. So I think that getting the reps in for that helps a lot. It's worth pointing out, I guess, as well, that in the composition restrictions that we've got, there's nothing that makes infantry or core units more appealing. You probably end up taking some more, but it's the way that capturing the objectives works, which is only with core units of unit strength 10 or more. That's where there's a real incentive to start putting actual blocks on the field, whether it's infantry or cavalry. If they're core blocks of 8 knights or 15 archers or 20 spearmen, they actually have something to do in these scenarios that they don't in a normal game.
Yeah,
exactly. And they can still bring some value to the board.
And I prefer it more than like and I don't mean to rip off, sound like I'm ripping into 40k or anything, but like some of those secondary missions, they seem to change turn to turn, and they're almost like arbitrary. It's like 1 minute I'm doing this, and the next minute I'm doing this random thing. And it's like, I don't know, it blows my head a little bit. And then I think the tournament scenes I've seen in Warhammer before, we've done things like capture this cart and then try to get her off the board, and it's just fine. But I don't know, sometimes a bit, or like you pick it up and now you can't march, and I don't know, like it gets all complicated. Whereas this is just like, hey, if you need that thing or you want to sit near that thing, like just kill the army, but kill them over there where you're sitting near that thing. And like it just feels it's still like Warhammer, but you've got these extra added bonuses, and so it doesn't seem as complicated.
One thing to point out, I guess, for any TOs who do want to add some of these objective scenarios into their event, because they put in a whole bunch of extra victory points, if you're using any kind of victory points, like battle point system or victory points as a tiebreaker, you'll need to do something to mitigate the effect if only some of your rounds have these scenarios, because you can quite easily get like 4,000 victory points in a game, in one of these scenario games, which might blow out your victory points differential if that's your tiebreaker.
Yeah, well, I was looking at, I mean, not to jump too far, but man, you've invented the 30 system. Is that
the
what it
30
is?
nil system. Yeah, it's brand new, trademarked. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought like 20 nil's good, but 30 nil's even better. Surely.
Exactly. Even more points. Even more points for everybody.
Yeah. Like I guess so. Did you guys? I mean, we don't need to go through all this. Yeah. Like, did you end up? Were you just like mathing that out to sort of work through that? Is that what you were doing to sort of come up with what you would need, or did you get some of that? What did you run when it was that first tournament? What was the?
It was a version of this, but we were using the 20 nil system, or the 30 nil system. I think then it was 25. I say we. This was my fault. Did not properly account for just how many extra points there were, and so the battle points table that we were using at Dragon's Grudge made it a bit too easy to get the really big wins. If you were up by 500 or 600 points in kills, a lot of the time you're also getting up by big chunks on objectives as well, and so fairly close games ended up with massively ballooning scores. So we've I think the maximum win was like 2,800 points. Under the revised system, it now goes up to like 4,600. There's a few more. Basically making it easier for people to get more points even out of losing games, because something that we were really wanting to do with this was make sure it's not just working out who wins the event, but also giving people who aren't winning the event like stuff to play for and getting points out of games if they make some good moves. Maybe it doesn't win you the game in a bad matchup, but maybe it gets you a few extra points. Whereas in a win-loss draw system or in some other versions of this, that wasn't always the case, and you could play pretty well but still end up getting smashed in points when maybe that wasn't reflective of the game.
Yeah, because you'd be hard-pressed not to get, I don't know, 100, 300, 500 points. Would you? Like, you know what I mean? Like in terms of... and then if you've got that, if you're down by that, then you're still getting a chunk. You're
still going to get something, and it's trying to make. I know a lot of people love win-loss draw because they think if you win all 5 of your games, you should win the event. And to be fair, you would be hard pressed not to in this. But unless your wins are absolutely minuscule by 100 points every single one, in which case
You're
the
up
argument for whether that person deserves to be the overall winner is a little bit weaker, perhaps. But yeah, it's trying to give people who are playing in maybe a more difficult matchup or a more difficult game something to play for as well. Which I think it's just trying to engage it. You're trying to avoid the situation where somebody goes into a match, goes, well, I've lost
Can't
this
do
because
it.
I'm facing this army or this player or whatever, and like I'm just gonna have a really crap time over the next couple of hours. At least this way you're like, okay, well I can achieve something while I'm playing this game. So
how does, like, going back to your first point, Chris, about TOs, if they were only going to use it for 2, say, scenarios, like, is there any thought on how you would adjust that? Or
the most straightforward thing that I can think of is that if you're using just a couple of rounds with the objective scenarios and a whole bunch of extra victory points, maybe just use your normal 20-0 system, but for those 2 rounds or however many rounds it is, just halve the victory points people get. Potentially, if you're using victory points as a tiebreaker, that's probably the neatest way to match up a couple of rounds of this scenario system with your normal victory point system, because you get almost around about twice as many victory points out of these games. So if you just halve the total, plug that into your normal 20-0 system, that should be close enough to working.
Okay, cool. That's a good tip. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I mean, this is pretty exciting. I definitely would try to get some cash games. At least I really liked this. Just the look of the game, so it always makes me it just made me happy looking at my orcs with a lot more orcs and goblins on the table, which was pretty cool. Where do you guys think it's going to go from here? You're obviously doing the that tournament coming up. I mean, where are you seeing comp overall? Like, what else is happening over in the UK? Is the other tournaments running different comps? And
I think we're starting to get to that stage now where people have sort of had their fill of no comp out of the rulebook type games, and they're ready to try different things. Like, I'm just looking at events over the next 6 months, and I don't think, like, most of them will have some sort of restrictions, whether that's like 0 to 3, or whether it's Throne of Skulls comp, German comp, or I mean, even GW themselves use some sort of restrictions. There's not been one sort of competitive event that they've held that hasn't had restrictions of some sort. So you can see that they recognize that something is required, and it's just about what is necessary. I mean, Chris and I are heading away to Warhammer World for their big tournament in a couple of weeks. So maybe we'll bump into them. Maybe Aussie Comp will just be left casually on the table, be like, consider this. Maybe you'll see some of these restrictions coming in. You never know, and if you do, then you know where you saw it first.
The other option, I guess, would be for us to take one of us could take 180 poison skeleton block, and anyone who complains would just be like, well, maybe here's a solution to your problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's the problem, and here's the solution to it.
So they do pretty heavy, like, soft score stuff. Like, it's a bit.
Well, at some events, so Throne of Skulls this year actually had some fairly heavy soft scores, but this event that we're going to, it doesn't. It's it's pretty much just a standard tournament.
Is this the anniversary one or something? Is that what's this one for? I don't even know what it's called.
It's the grand tournament.
Yeah, they do 1 or 2 a year, where it's literally just sort of uncomped, other than slight restriction on duplication of the same units, basically. But other than that, it's pretty much at the rulebook. So it's probably as close to uncomped as you get at the moment. But I think, honestly, this might be the last one that we see GW do before they put further restrictions in or make some changes to the overall game. I honestly think there'll be something.
Yeah, well, that might be a good way just to segue just for the last little bit here is we were talking about it before we went on air. Like, it feels like there's something coming June, July. I think you just said June before. I can't remember if that was pre or post turning on the record button. How do you think? I did a video for Old World this morning, I think, about it. I don't even know if it's out by the time you're hearing this, but it was how do you think they would deliver that? Is that a PDF errata? Is this a campaign book? Can errata do it? Like, would they butcher the rule book that much? They do it with 40K, but
Yeah, it's difficult to say. The easiest way for them to do it would be just to release some sort of PDF document, wouldn't it? They'd be like, here's a matched play document or something. That would be the easiest way I can imagine them doing it. Probably the fastest, least amount of sort of effort required. Anything more than that, like campaign books, that feels like you're going to need to start printing stuff. I mean, even such a small thing like having those little scenarios that they released a few months back, like I'd imagine that required a fair bit of work as it is as well. So I think if we were to see something, the most likely thing will be some sort of PDF / heavy errata, or maybe at the same time as like, you know, their FAQ releases. Maybe they'll be like, here's the latest FAQ, here's some errata changes, oh, and here's like a match play document. Enjoy. I think that's the most likely scenario.
It also wouldn't shock me if it is sort of disguised as something narrative, given the sort of way they run their kind of public relations for the old world. If they say, look, the Empire is an army with lots of infantry. Here is a set of, I'm just using kind of our approach, but it might be, here is a set of alternative restrictions to use for your Empire armies. Brackets, you can use this for general games of the old world as well.
Yeah.
Really good point, actually. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, it's a narrative thing, but also all of a sudden, then it becomes really easy for events to pick up and use, which is kind of what we did with Upon Shrouded Shores. It was supposedly narrative and kind of is narrative, but I don't know how many people are deeply invested in the storyline of the old world. But it's still like a really good scenario to play, whether or not you care about high elves landing upon the shore and fighting some wolves of the sea.
Yeah, I mean, just if people haven't heard it, like some of the rumors that are floating around, I don't know if it was this week or last or whatever, but it's like some of them are easy, like, you know, buffs to sword and board infantry and stuff, but basically almost redo of what looks to be redo of skirmishes, given they say something like 180-degree line of sight or something, but I don't know, you could do that without turning them back into blocks. So I don't know. And that's where I just looked at it and went, I was saying, the rule book's not even designed in a way really where you can like pull a bit out and replace it, because it's littered throughout the whole.
It's everywhere. So, it's tricky.
So I'm not sure. Like my view was similar to that, where it probably has to come in a separate document, which is almost just saying these are different ways of doing it, but you're gonna have to sort it out. Like it's almost like a narrative thing, and you use how, like, because there's going to be so many edge cases that if they replace skirmishing, but then there'll be some other part in the rule book that mentions it, and you'll be like, hang on, but that now doesn't work with these. I don't know. I'm confused as to how they could do such a big change without a V2.
I'm really skeptical as to there being big changes imminent. I suspect that rumors often get inflated. I remember being told absolutely for sure there's going to be a balance patch coming out in like
January,
August, September last year. People had, people were saying absolutely this is how the game is going to be from then on. And what ended up happening is that, and that was the like 500 point max on a character. And what it was the Throne of Skulls comp pack had then been kind of inflated into a rumor about like a general's handbook coming out imminently. And I guess I don't know, my caution is to temper expectations. I think that there's a good chance that the next errata FAQ will have a little bit of an eye towards balancing some things, but I'm not expecting massive changes through that kind of medium, and I wouldn't expect massive changes through any other kind of way until we start getting to like a second edition, which I think the community stuff is gonna have a role to play, even though we will keep getting some bits and pieces of updates from Games Workshop.
And they probably will need it. I mean, the timeline sounds like that's when Wood Elves will be out. Like Beastmen, Wood Elves will be out. It's a good time to throw a FAQ and errata. You've got all the core factions out now. Everyone's got their toys. This is what's worked. This is what hasn't. But yes, in the confines of the current rules and all that, without changing too much. I could easily see that. It just feels like this week these rumors have ratcheted up as you're right, Chris, but they're sort of saying like it's almost fact this is what's happening, and you're like, how's this going to get implemented? I'm really confused. Plus, it's SDS. They don't do that, do they? Really? They don't like butcher their rule books like that, really. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. And Warhammer's a complicated game. It would be difficult for anybody to do a good job of extracting all these rules, changing them, and them, fitting them in all the sort of corner cases. It would be easier for them to just say, look, here's a campaign leaflet or whatever, and then this skirmishers work like this, and then sort of take from it what you will. At the end of the day, like, we can't really rely on GW to make the game how we want it to be, because everybody has different opinions of what that's going to be.
Yeah.
So, we as a community should really take steps to try and steer it towards a version that we think is sort of how we want Warhammer to look like. And we can take ideas that GW release, whether it's through scenarios, campaign booklets, rules changes, and bits and pieces, or we can sort of amend it and use our own little thoughts as well. You don't need to sit and wait for them to tell you how to play your game. You can make changes yourself. It's allowed.
And also, there can be lots of different changes that can be made. Like, personally, I don't want every event to just be Aussie Rules Comp, even though I think that's the way I would like to play, at least some events. I would be much happier in the long run if there were several different comp packs going around, lots of different visions for how the game is played. And then you can go to one event and play with no comp restrictions, go to another with some heavy ones, some other ones in between. And especially for people who only have one army, that's probably a good way to keep things fresh because otherwise you get your optimal build. Every tournament is 2,000 points, no comp. I'm never going to have any variation.
It's stale and boring. Yeah. Like, unless you've got a goal to, become number one on that particular thing. Yeah. I mean, how do you go? What's your view quickly of, you get some people talk about, the more this happens, it sort of splits the community. Have you ever seen it split the community? I don't know.
I mean, we all play with different versions of Warhammer. Let's be honest already. There's people read the rules in different ways. People agree, we should play this way, we should play this another way. Like, that already happens. And I think that's a natural thing that, unless the game is super clear cut and there's absolutely no arguments about it, in which case we're not playing Warhammer anymore. I don't think you're going to play the same version of Warhammer everywhere in the world. You're going to have local variations, and part of that is just making things a little bit more interesting by just spicing things up by having scenarios or little comp restrictions or little bits and pieces like that. So it doesn't have to be everybody must now either play out of the book or Aussie rules. Like, that's not the only two options. You can play both. You can play one. You can play option C, which is something else entirely. Like, as long as we're all having fun and we're all, making the game grow.
I don't think I've met anyone who's gone, I'm not going to go play with this bunch of tournaments because they play this particular pack or whatever. I don't know. There might be the odd person who does that, but I don't know.
I think when you've got lots of tournaments to choose from, that might lead to you choosing one tournament over another. But I think that's fine. That means there's lots of
tournaments. You do that anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, that one's got a bar, that doesn't. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think also that then you can have tournaments that can play around even with just what's already there and sort of build their identity. Why does every tournament have to be 2,000 points? Rule of 3? Why doesn't one tournament be the allies tournament and you have to take allies at this tournament? Another one might be no level 4s or whatever it is that people do that's more about balance. But there's just a lot of levers that you can pull, and as long as the community as a whole is okay with playing with slightly different lists in different games or at different events, then I don't see any reason that there should be any kind of split. And in the past, that's not been the case. Every tournament does its own thing, and people, for the most part, just change up what they're doing to suit the tournament and occasionally decide not to go to an event, which is, not what people want, but also it means that the people who do go to that event get the event that they want to play in.
Yeah. That's the thing. I just don't buy that, really. I just don't think. I think we're all addicted to this game, so we're going to turn it. If that's the option you have to do, you'll go.
And there's we live in a world where we have more events than we have available time, which is a lovely place to be.
It's insane. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, again, I can't remember really back in 8th like that. I mean, it got pretty busy, but at least in Australia, I don't feel like we had. I think we would have had maybe more big 2-dayers, but we don't have the volume that we have now of all the one day, as I've said. Like, it feels like every weekend there, even in Australia, there's a place to go and play. At least on the East Coast, there's going to be something. And you guys, I mean, geez, you have so many tournaments available.
It's literally every weekend. Like even as small as in Scotland, like on the weekend that we had Dragon's Grudge, there was another event on that had the same amount of people. Like, Scotland is not a huge gaming community, but we had 2 events on at the same time. There was like almost 40 people playing across the country, which is, you know, pretty good for a country of only 5 million people. Not all of them playing Warhammer. Now, even as a TO, you're thinking, okay, I want to host a decent sized 2-day event. When can I have it on the calendar? You're struggling to fit it in,
totally.
because there's big events here, there, and everywhere. So it's it's a really good place to be. I think as a community, we're in a very exciting stage at the moment. Everybody's loving the game. They're trying to improve it. They're trying to do bits and pieces. It's growing. It's only getting busier, and I think it's an exciting time for where we are in the hobby. And I can't wait to see
the creativity that this is what breeds this. And you're not doing it because the game's broken. Like, and I said this on another podcast the other day, was
no, definitely
these aren't coming out because it's not broken. It just has, it's like anything. It just has these edge cases. We don't want it to get stale. We want to see more Warhammer. We might maybe want to make it look like a bit more like Warhammer. We've been doing this for the last 18 months. It's a great, man. I really appreciate the effort that you guys go to put this together. I'm assuming it doesn't just happen overnight. That's for sure.
It takes a while. That's true. That's for sure. But it's good. It's out there now. It's out there live. I hope people get to use it. And people will get to feedback. The pack itself there, I mean, that'll be live. People have got access to that. It's got our contact details in it. So if you guys want to talk about the pack, you want to ask about questions or just anything at all, we're more than happy to talk to you. So just get in touch with us, let us know. And your feedback will make it better going forward.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you guys want to cover with this sort of stuff, or Warhammer in general, or should we wrap it up around the hour? Because I know Chris has to get to work.
I mean, the longer we talk, the longer before I have to start working. So
I know you're afternoon. That's right. You're okay. Yeah,
that's fair. No, I think it's very good that there's a lot of. Chris has been on about 100 episodes of different podcasts over the last 24 hours. I think it's really good for all of us sort of like content creator type people to get together and talk about these things, and to let more people aware of what's going on in different parts of the world, different parts of the community as well. So thanks very much for having us on, Gumwood. It's very much appreciated.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, I'm honored to have you guys on here. So thanks so much. Whatever I can do, I'll get the word out, and hopefully more countries pick it up, and we'll see where it goes. So big thank you, guys. If you haven't checked, I know Chris, you guys just did a Dwellers, your quarterly Dwellers episode just went out as well. So I'm assuming people...
Dwellers has just dropped to tide you over for another several months. Luckily, there's other content creators who are far more prolific in the meantime. I know both of you have very active channels.
Yeah, so no, I'll definitely jump. I didn't want to listen to that because I thought you might talk a little bit of that. So I'm going to get into that later today. And Pashhammer, jump over onto. It's just Pashhammer, isn't it? Search
Pashhammer, that's all it is. I made it nice and straightforward so that you don't forget.
I'll link all that stuff. Really appreciate it, guys. And all listeners, obviously follow these guys. You probably know them anyway. If you want to jump over and look at the other Old World Fanatics stuff, you can check that over on patreon.com/oldworldfanatics, or just subscribe, hit the bell button and all that sort of stuff, and check our live podcast on Monday. But outside of that, thanks guys, thanks for joining and jumping on another Old World Fanatics episode. We'll chat to you guys later. See ya.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.